بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So I think this might come before. No. Yeah. Sure. Hmm. Oh, here we go. Okay. So it says, so Imam Shafi'i says, أخبرنا مالك بن أنس عن ابن شهاب. There we go. عن سعيد المسيب عن أبي هو. Interesting. So Imam Shafi'i narrates this musnadan, and Qanabi is narrating this mursalan. So here it says عن سعيد المسيب أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Okay, so this is of the marasil of Sa'id al-Musayyab, according in Qanabi's version. There's a gap here between Sa'id al-Musayyab and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Imam Shafi'i, he said, you know, the mursal hadith is in principle not a proof. And with the exception of Sa'id al-Musayyab, because all of his hadiths, basically, when he quotes the Prophet ﷺ, it's always muttasil. There's always we've always found a source, basically. So anyway, here Imam Shafi'i, he narrates it and Sa'id al-Musayyab and Abi Hurayrata, whereas Al-Qa'nabi does not do that. So I'm reading here the editor, he says, so Yahya ibn Yahya al-Laythi, Abu Mus'ab al-Zuhri, Abdullah ibn Maslama al-Qa'nabi, how here in front of us, Suwaid ibn Sa'id and Muhammad ibn Hasan Shaybani, they all narrate it. They all narrate it like this, like with a gap here in the chain. Whereas Imam Shafi'i narrates it, وقد وصله الشافعي وخلاف الجمهور أصحاب مالك فرواه من مرسل سعيد المسيب ولم يذكروا أبا هريرة وغير أنه تبين صواب وصله. Right. So we find various different chains from Ibn Shihab that mention Abu Hurairah. Right. So it's not a mistake. Right. So the issue is, did Imam Shafi make a mistake when he added Abu Hurairah here? The answer is no. How do we find that? We looked at other chains for the hadith, and we found that that's how it's happening. So basically, Imam Malik narrated it in different ways. Most of the time, he skipped when he said Sa'id al-Musayyib, he skipped Abu Hurairah. Why? Because it's obvious or not a problem. Right? If you don't mention Abu Hurairah, it's still reliable according to Imam Malik. And so it's just kind of extra information that doesn't need to be there and could be skipped without changing anything, right? And you know, so that's basically what's happening there. So it's like a non-problem, basically. But usually this is a problem, right? Usually that's a problem when somebody narrates it with a gap in the chain and somebody fills in the gap. And particularly when that gap is intuitive, right? That gap is intuitive. You would imagine that person would be there. So it's quite common that you would make that mistake. You would just automatically just fill in that gap, right? And so that's often a mistake. So here it's not a problem. So anyway, so we have Malik from Ibn Shihab az-Zuhri, from Sa'id al-Musayyab, this is the Ibrahim al-Nakha'i of Medina, from Abu Huraira, right? And the two are good examples of fiqh or hadith. So Sa'id al-Musayyab is a faqih par excellence. Abu Huraira is a muhaddith par excellence, right? So it's not that Abu Huraira doesn't know fiqh, or it's not that Sa'id al-Musayyab doesn't know hadith, but Sa'id al-Musayyab is this big mufti. His fatwa fill our books of fiqh, right? He's very significant. The echo of his fatwa are very important in Shafi fiqh. You see him come up a lot, right, through the Medinan school. There are many things you find, for example, the proof in the Shafi school will be a weak hadith or a Hasan hadith. In reality, the whole idea comes from Sa'id al-Musayyib. So really, we're kind of like agreeing with him, if that makes sense, based on certain evidence. But his idea is the initial kind of, that starts the ball rolling, if that makes sense. So we're not doing taqleed of him, but he's very, very significant. Okay, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حين قفل من خيبر, when they returned from Khaybar, here it has Asra, and here it says Asra, and Imam Shafi has Sara. They're the same thing. Asra means to travel by night. Sara means to travel by night. Right? Sometimes af'ala and fa'ala have the same meaning. And then he says, I'm reading Imam Shafi. He says, حتى إذا كان من آخر الليل عرس, they rested. وقال لبلال اكلأ لنا الصبح, guard for us the morning. Al-kala means a pasturage, a pasture, an area where you take your where there's grass, and it's called a kala because it's protected, like himaya, or hima, afwan. Hima is a place where you take your sheep to graze, but it's called a hima from the word himaya because you protect it and you look after it, and this is your land, it's your turf. Right? It's like the word turf, right? The two senses in colloquial English, right? Get off my turf, and turf is a place where there's grass, right? But you say get off my turf, or get off my land, get off my area, right? So kala, to protect. Wanam, and it says here, fanama rasul. I have wanama Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ashabuhu wa kala Bilal ma qaddara lahu. ثم استند إلى راحلته وهو مقبل الفجر. Which book do you have? This is, you have the same print as me, don't you? You interesting. So how can you have a different print? This book is like new. This is Muwatta of Imam Malik bi Ruwayat Imam Shafi'i, not Darul Lubab. Oh, of Qanabi. Okay. Yeah, so I think what this edit has kind of like merged Qanabi with wasn't it Abu Musa'ab or something like that? Yeah. So a lot of these things that's like a non-difference. Banama, there's nama, thumma nama, wa nama is like a non-difference. So it is in principle important, but not really. Like it's not kind of a non-difference. Okay. وهو مقبل الفجر وهو مقبل الفجر same thing فغلبته عيناه فلم يستيقظ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا أحد من الركب of the riders حتى ضربتهم الشمس ففزع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال يا بلال أين ما قلت فقال بلال يا رسول الله أخذ بنفس الذي أخذ بنفسك right he who took your soul took my soul i.e. so فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اقتادوا drive on فبعثوا رواحلهم فاقتادوا شيئا so they didn't pray immediately they've now missed Fajr sunrise come up and now they're going somewhere else so that tells us that what that you don't have to, so if you miss a prayer unintentionally there's no you don't have to do qada immediately ثم أمر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بلالا فأقام الصلاة وصلى لهم الصبح ثم قال حين قضى الصلاة من نسي الصلاة فليصليها إذا ذكرها فإن الله يقول وأقم الصلاة لذكري i.e. because of when lam can be because of or when right when you remember me لذكركم إياي when you remember me right so this is a concept of qada you can do a qada of the salah so now Imam al-Shafi'i says قال الشافعي فجعل ذلك وقتا لها وأخبر به عن الله تعالى ولم يستثني من الأوقات يدعها فيه بعد ذكرها so he said so he made that a time for it i.e. when you remember Allah that's a time and when you remember the prayer that's a time to do it and he said that's what Allah has told us to do ولم يستثني من الأوقات and he didn't exclude any time so therefore qada in the makruh time is fine يدعها فيه بعد ذكرها whenever you remember that's the reason so after Fajr it's after Asr you remember that you have a missed prayer to do it you do it وقال أيضا لم يستيقظوا حتى ضربتهم الشمس وضرب الشمس لهم أن يكون لها حر وذلك بعد أن يتعالى النهار وفي هذا يدل على أن اقتيادهم لما روي عن زيد بن أسلم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن هذا واد به شيطان so we mentioned that's because of this is a valley in which there is a devil ليس لأن تحل صلاة النافلة So the reason why they left was because it's a bad place. ليس لأن تحل صلاة النافلة. They didn't leave so that they could make a time. So the issue is when can you do qada? Do you have to wait a bit before you do the qada fajr? The answer is no. The reason why they left was because there was a devil in that valley, not because they had to wait till the sun was higher up. لأن استيقاظهم كان وقد حلت صلاة النافلة. They woke up at a time in which it was fine to pray sunnah prayers, i.e. the sun was well up already. Okay. My next hadith. When you expect to be alive for a long time, you know, basically, you shouldn't do that, right? Like basically, we always have to try and prioritize number one things. Like if you were to die now, you know, that's the, you know, same thing with qada prayers, like you were sick during Ramadan, same thing as qada fast, right? So it's got to be something pressing, right? You can stand before Allah and say, honestly, Allah, it was more important for me. For example, my dad was waiting for me. I had an exam, you know, I've been studying all night and then I missed Fajr and I'm still super behind on this exam. And it's really important to pass this exam, so I'm going to do that first, you know. So we only miss a sunnah or delay a good thing when there's something else that's better than that. So it has to be more important. Like you can generally like here's a good thing as well, Ammar, and this is useful as well for prospective brides when you come to that bridge, is would you advise me to delay Fajr? Like me and you, let's swap positions, right? I'm you and you're me. Okay, you've just missed Fajr. I've just missed Fajr, right? Would you tell me to pray it now? Would you tell me to go and do X, for example? No, you need to get on the train. You got to get on the bus. You got to make that phone call. You got to check your email. You have to do this. Would you advise me to do that? I'm like, no. Okay, therefore it's your nafs, right? Right. If you wouldn't advise me to do it in your situation, if I were in your situation, you wouldn't advise me to do that. Then you know that it's just your nafs that's doing it. You know what I'm saying? Like you stand outside of yourself. Same thing, prospective bride, prospective groom, prospective husband. If I were you, would you advise me to marry her? No. Okay, dude. I don't think it's a good idea to marry her then. Like you've just been smitten, like you're just thinking like a love sick person, but like you're not thinking logically. Like if I were in your shoes, you wouldn't advise, like you wouldn't advise a brother like you to marry someone like her, but you want to marry her. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? So stepping out of yourself is a useful thing, right? Does that make sense, Ahmad? Another example, you've woken up 30 times last night for your baby, you know, and you set 3 alarm clocks and you slept through Fajr. You woke up, said, dude, we missed Fajr. Go back to sleep. Like you're totally smashed, right? Like you're on survival mode. So you're like, yeah, Allah, honest to God, like honest to God, literally honest to God, like honest to God, sleeping is more important now than getting up and praying, etc. It's like you're on survival mode. Does that make sense, Amar? But in general, we only opt out of the optimal when something else is the optimal. Like we never accept the suboptimal from yourself. That's not something you can accept. Do not accept not doing the best possible thing. That's not a standard that you can accept from yourself. I want to do what Allah wants me to do. I want to do the best thing in every single situation that Allah wants me to do. The question is, what is that? That's all I'm asking. What is that? Should I sleep now or should I pray? Should I eat now or should I pray? Should I do this or should I do that? That's the question. But we never say can. That's not a you don't ask that question, is it permissible or is it can? You say, what is the best possible thing to do? Right, that's the system that we work with. وَاتَّبَعُوا رِضْوَانَ اللَّهِ, and they diligently and carefully try to find what is the best possible thing, right? Should I dress like this or should I dress like that? Ya Allah, there's different situations in life. Allah, I want to dress the way that you want me to dress in this setting, right? Or eat or drink or talk, if I, etc. Okay, dokie. So now I have trying to find this hadith. Here we go. Okay. So it says باب النهي عن الصلاة بالهاجرة, not praying in the at noon. أخبرنا مالك. So yeah. أخبرنا مالك. No. Sorry, it's this one here. This one. أخبرنا مالك عن عبد الله بن يزيد مولى الأسود بن سفيان عن أبي سلمة ibn عبد الرحمن. Right? So وعن محمد ibn عبد الرحمن الثوبان. Yeah, they're both there. عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا كان الحر كان ناقصا فأبردوا بالصلاة. إذا وجد الحر. Right? It's not وإذا كان الحر شديدا وإذا كان الحر خفيفا. It's إذا كان الحر. Right? This is كان تامة. Right? Meaning if there be heat, not if the heat is hot, intense. فأبردوا بالصلاة. That's how he has it here. فإن شدة الحر من فيح جهنم. وذكر. So here it mentions, what does that mean? من فيح جهنم. Abu Sulaiman al-Khattabi, he mentions, he says ومعنى الكلام يحتمل وجهين أحدهما أن شدة الحر في الصيف من وهج حر جهنم في الحقيقة. He says it's possible that the heat or the intensity of heat in the summer is literally from the blaze of Jahannam itself. Literally. والوجه الآخر أن هذا الكلام إنما خرج مخرج التشبيه والتقريب أي كأنه نار جهنم في الحر فاحذروها واجتنبوا ضررها. Right? And so another position is a metaphor. Right? And that the min means like. Right? شدة الحر كفيح جهنم. This is like hellfire. You don't like hellfire, do you? No. Then you shouldn't like this heat either. وذكر أن النار اشتكت إلى ربها فأذن لها في كل عام بنفسين نفس في الشتاء ونفس في الصيف. i.e. these and then the next hadith as well. So i.e. you shouldn't pray when it's extremely hot, and you should. Why? Because people are not going to come to the masjid. So delay it. Give yourself maybe an hour after or an hour and a half after noon, so that there's actually some shade. حدثنا أخبرنا مالك عن أبي الزناد عن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا اشتد الحر فأبردوا بالصلاة فإن شدة الحر من فيح جهنم. Okay, then it says قال الشافعي يستحب للإمام تعجيل الصلاة لأول وقتها. So it says in general it is recommended for the Imam to pray at the beginning of the time. إلا يشتد الحر فيبرد بها في مساجد الجماعات. He says unless it's extremely hot, in which case he delays it so that he cools it off. He waits till things are cooler in masjids that there are people gathering. قال ولا يبلغ بتأخيرها آخر وقتها. That doesn't mean you delay it to the end of its time. فيصليها جميعا معا فيصليهما جميعا معا. He says that doesn't mean that you should actually get to the point where you end up joining Dhuhr and Asr. Right? This is very important because you say ad-din yusr, right? Ad-din yusr. So if it's hot, wouldn't it be easy just to join Dhuhr with Asr? So yeah, it would be. So is it just any difficulty that allows you to join Dhuhr and Asr, or is it a significant difficulty that allows you to join Dhuhr and Asr? So this is the problem with people who say ad-din yusr. The deen is not always yusr. So there's clearly difficulty, which is life or death, and there's clearly difficulty that you have to deal with. So what is that thing in the middle, which is called a difficulty, that is significant enough to be counted as darura? What is that thing? You can't just say it's any difficulty, right? So again, I experienced that. It was a quite, educational experience. It's a nice experience. In Jordan was joining Dhuhr and Asr and Maghrib and Isha every single day for 3 months of the year because it's winter, right? And winters in Jordan are not very serious compared to It's Jordan, right? It's the Middle East. It's not very serious. So it's the middle of the day, okay? There is some snow, like somewhere, and it's not that cold. But the fact that it's colder, so their logic was it was colder, right? So isn't every single day colder than another day or hotter than another day, right? So obviously that doesn't make any sense. So what I observed was stupidity, right? That's something that's not, there's no fiqh in that. Like it's always difficult to pray. It has to be significantly difficult, right? So here we see, for example, that there was a reason to join the prayer, which was it was very hot, but you don't join the prayer, right? So surely when you say you join, it has to be something worse than this, right? You have to get to this level and something worse, because otherwise it's not an excuse, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I remember, in Chicago, just walking to Fajr, I was walking to Fajr, I just had like a thobe on, I had a jubba on and a t-shirt under my thobe. And then I'm like, someone was like, you should dress properly. I'm like, it's okay. And that 2 minute walk, like my stomach was hurting, you know? I starting to feel that the bite, of the colds. It's cold, right? And then there's these little geese outside hanging out. Uh, yeah. Also, I'm from England, so like I'm just used to the cold. So um, but I just used to being really cold all the time. It's fine. Um, but it's not the same. It adds up eventually. So what I'm trying to say is when you see that there's many scenarios where Deen does not the Deen does not do mura'at of yusr and mashaqqa. So therefore, it's not an easy game. This thing of judging how difficult does it have to be, right? When you say, so you can't just come along and say ad-Deen yusr. Al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir. Yeah, but what kind of mashaqqa? It has to be a mashaqqa that is more than something like this, right? It has to be something that's more than that. So when we're trying to ascertain or make a judgment of a mashaqqa or a difficulty that is going to be multahaqa bil-darura, that's going to be treated as the darura, we have to weigh it against the darura itself, right? See how close it is to that. We also have to weigh it against other scenarios where the Sharia does not change based on difficulty, right? Because it's not true to say that in a mutlaq sense, any difficulty could lead for ease, right? Can you speak about the difference between the two scenarios of delaying dhuhr because it's hot versus making sujood on the ground? No, so both don't have rukhsas, Ammar. They're the same. They're the same in that both have no rukhsas. So do we have to do sujood? Yes, you do. So delaying the prayer is not really a rukhsa because it's still within dhuhr time. So that's the point that he's making. You still have this window. So in both scenarios, you just have to deal with it. So for me, right, like for me, I'm in Saudi Arabia. It's 1 hour after dhuhr. It's super hot, right? It's actually difficult for me to go outside, right? But that difficulty is considered negligible. Deal with it, basically, right? And there's a lot of these things, right? There's a lot of scenarios like that. Let's say, for example, divorce. Isn't divorce a difficulty? So, like, if is it haram to divorce somebody? It's not. It's not haram, right? So, like, you could get married into divorce. Does that mean? So, if that's a difficulty, then surely we have to, ad-darar yuzal, right? Ad-darar yuzal that's a principle in fiqh. A difficulty or harm is removed. So, do we have to ban divorce or something like that? No. It's a difficulty that's there. Polygamy or polygyny is a mashaqqa, right? I don't think any woman in general likes being a co-wife, right? But it's like, deal with it, you know? Or I don't think any man likes to be in a situation where he's lost his job and then his wife leaves him. She goes to the qadi and says, yeah, he can't support me, so I want to annul the marriage. That's difficult, right? So there's lots of different difficulties in life. There's lots of difficulties in life. There's tons of them, you know? So when someone comes up and says, no, the Sharia, the Sharia doesn't expect you to do that. It's like, I think the Sharia does. Like the Sharia by default asks you to do lots of things, right? التكليف إلزام ما فيه كلفة, right? What does taklif mean? Moral responsibility is forcing you to do things that are difficult. ما فيه كلفة. So it's actually a qarina. One of the qara'in for something not being obligatory is the fact that A, is not difficult, and B, you would want to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like the Sharia does not ask you to do simple things that take no effort whatsoever. So if there was an amr to do something like that, you would know that it's not for obligation. It's for permissibility, right? يا معشر الشباب من استطاع منكم الباءة فليتزوج. O youth, whoever is able to get married should get married. So the amr is for ibaha, right? Not for or nadb, right? One of the two. But it's not for wujub. Why? Because people want to get married. لا يوجد فيه كلفة, right? It's not difficult to get married. It's not something like, oh my God, it's like really difficult, right? That's a weight on me. It's like people want to get married. It's a normal thing. So the fact that you're being told to do something that you want to do tells us that it's not obligatory, right? So when you're like, I don't want to do that, that's difficult, right? You know, it's so the Sharia is like going to the gym, no pain, no gain. Like on it, like but just like going to the gym, it doesn't ask you to pick up weights that you can't pick up, nor does it ask you to regularly, pick up weights that will harm you. You're doing things like that, etc. Same idea, exactly the same idea. Okay, so that's that. So then he says, لكن الإبراد ما يعلم أنه يصليها متمهلا وينصرف منها قبل آخرها. Right, that you're going to delay it a little bit. قبل آخر وقتها. You pray before the end of the dhuhr. ليكون بين انصرافه منها وبين آخر وقتها فصل. There should be a gap, obviously, then between dhuhr and asr. فأما من صلاها في بيته أو في جماعة بفناء بيته فلا يحضرها إلا من بحضرته, right? As opposed to somebody who prays at home or he prays in a courtyard in his home, no one's coming from outside. فليصليها في أول وقتها. The illah is no longer there. The difficulty of going out in the hot sun is no longer there. لأنه لا أذى عليهم في حرها, because there's no harm in the heat there. ولا تؤخر في الشتاء بحال, and it is not to be delayed in the winter in any scenario. So we're now on to Bab al-Tahara. Here we go. Okay. So then he says, أخبرنا مالك عن عمرو بن يحيى المازني عن أبيه أنه قال لعبد الله بن زيد وهو جد عمرو بن يحيى هل تستطيع أن تريني كيف كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يتوضأ؟ قال عبد الله بن زيد نعم فدعا بوضوء, water, right? Wudu is the water. Wudu is wudu itself. فأفرغ على يديه فغسل يديه مرتين ثم مضمض واستنشق ثلاثا ثم غسل وجهه ثلاثا ثم غسل يديه مرتين إلى المرفقين ثم مسح رأسه ويديه عفوا. ثم مسح رأسه بيديه فأقبل بهما وأدبر. بدأ بمقدم رأسه ثم ذهب بهما باء تعدية أي أذهبهما. He made them go إلى قفاه, to the nape of his neck. ثم ردهما إلى الموضع الذي بدأ منه ثم غسل رجليه. قال الشافعي: ولا يقال لشيء من هذه الأحاديث مختلف مطلقا، ولكن الفعل فيه يختلف من وجه أنه مباح لا اختلاف الحلال وحرام. So he said there's no conflict here, right? It's not in an absolute conflict. Well, what's happening is people are doing different things in terms of somebody, at one time doing something that's permissible, another doing something else that's permissible. This is not an actual conflict. لكن يقال أقل ما يجزي. I have يجزي. It should be يجزي. Not sure why it has يجزي. So you can say أجزأ يجزئ إجزاء or أجزى يجزي. Right? You can do تسهيل of the hamza and change it into a ya. وأقل ما يجزي من الوضوء مرة. The bare minimum is to wash once. وأكمل ما يكون من الوضوء ثلاث. Okay, the same hadith here. عن مالك عن أبي الزناد عن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة. So this is this classic chain here. Abu Zinad from A'raj Abu Hurairah, super sahih. You find it in the 6 books all the time. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال: إذا توضأ أحدكم فليجعل في أنفه ماء ثم ليستنثر ومن استجمر فليوتر. So he has فليستنثر. Qanabi has فلينثر. I think it's ينثر, not ينثر. Allahu Alam. We did it in the Fath al-Alam. I can't remember what it was. Yeah. And then the next hadith. Can't find it. Hmm. ينتثر. Oh, both work with a dhamma and a kasra, Yaqub? Okay, great. Jazakumullah khair. Okay. Oh, so I can't find this hadith here. Just gets to the end. Maybe it's not in Qanabi's version and that's it. It's basically the same hadith with different chain. So it's in Abu Mus'ab's version, but it's not in Qanabi's version. Yeah, there we go. So it says and basically the same hadith, different chain. So it's like super أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من توضأ فليستنثر ومن استجمر فليوتر. Right, istijmar is doing istinja. Right, so with a different chain. From Abi Sa'id al-Khawlani, who I believe is Damascus. I think this chain is like, so it's like Imam Malik. So you have to understand, Ibn Shihab was in Damascus, so he's actually connected to the Umayyads. So I think when he's narrating from Sayyidina Anas, he's narrating from Sayyidina Anas in Damascus. So I think as well here, Abu Idris al-Khawlani, he's Shami, like he's in Damascus. Allahu Alam. Anyway, so Imam al-Shafi'i says, قال الشافعي ويدخل الماء أنفه ويستبلغ بقدر ما يرى أنه يأخذ بخياشيمه. So he says you should get water into your nose and يستبلغ, try and get it as far as you can, so it gets to your up into your nose. ولا يزيد على ذلك, you don't go beyond the inside of your nose. ولا يجعله كالسعوط, you don't snort it. وإن كان صائما رفق بالاستنشاق. If he's fasting, he should do it very gently. لئلا يدخل رأسه, so that it doesn't actually go up. Right? So you're not inhaling, etc. Imam Shafi doesn't explain that there's an amr here, right? So we just saw two Sahih hadiths that say when you make wudu, then put water in your mouth and put water in your nose. Right? So Imam Shafi'i says what? It's not obligatory. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ told one of the Sahaba, ثُمَّ تَوَضَّأْ كَمَا أَمَرَكَ اللَّهُ, and then make wudu as Allah commanded you. So the qarina in the Shafi school is any command, any hadith that says that the Prophet ﷺ made wudu in a certain way or told us to make wudu in a certain way is all understood as recommendation. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ also said, ثُمَّ تَوَضَّأْ كَمَا أَمَرَكَ اللَّهُ, as Allah has commanded you in the Quran, which is only face, hands, or face, arms, head and feet. That's it. So that's how the Shafis understand it, right? And that's how the Shafis understand. Okay, باب الوضوء النائم. باب وضوء النائم إذا قام إذا قام لصلاة. Is it the same hadith? Yes. أخبرنا مالك عن أبي الزناد عن الأعرج عن أبي هريرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا استيقظ أحدكم من نومه فليغسل يده قبل أن يدخله في وضوئه فإن أحدكم لا يدري أين باتت يده. قال الشافعي وإذا أدخل يده في الإناء قبل أن يغسلها وهو لا يستيقن. So Imam Shafi does istikhraj of the illah. The illah is عدم اليقين, right? So he says وهو لا يستيقن أن الشيء من النجاسة ماسها. So okay, what if I do have yaqeen? He says you do not do that. So is the illah that you woke up, or is the illah عدم اليقين? The illah is عدم اليقين. لم يفسد وضوءه وكذلك إذا شك أن يكون ماسها. So similarly, so he says if he did so, it would not make it would not invalidate his wudu, or says وكذلك إن شك أن يكون ماسها. What if you doubt that you've touched najasa? فإن كان اليد قد ماسته نجاسة فأدخلها. So notice he says كان اليد. What's wrong with saying فإن كان اليد? Why is that surprising? كان اليد. مؤنث, right? But is it مؤنث حقيقي or مجازي? Is it actually a female? مجازي, right? So because of مجازي, you can say إذا كانت اليد or إذا كان اليد. طلع الشمس طلعت الشمس. You say both. فإن كان اليد قد مسته. No, but this is really weird. He says فإن كان اليد قد مسته نجاسة. It's very strange because it says if the hand, masculine, touched it, masculine, filth, فأدخلها, and then puts it, the hand, feminine, في وضوئه. So that's just odd. That it's changing gender. Anyway, he's Imam Shafi, he can do what he wants. فأدخلها في وضوئه فإن كان الماء قد توضأ به أقل من قلتين فسد الماء فأهراقه وغسل منه الإناء وتوضأ بماء غيره لا يجزئه غير ذلك. Right, so he said he says if you have actually touched filth and you put your hand in the container that is less than the qullatain, then he should pour the water away and wash the container because it's become najas, right? It's a small amount of water, and he should make wudu with something other water, and he can't use that. And one thing that so it's a really good commentary on the Muwatta that I highly advise you all read, which is the Shaykh Waliullah Dahlawi. It's very, very short, like it's just like a light thing. It doesn't go through the asani, it doesn't really do anything. It's very, very brief. So Shaykh Waliullah Dahlawi has a commentary on the Muwatta, and what he does, he mentions the Shafi school, the Maliki school, and the Hanafi school. But what he adds, which is really useful, is certain verses of the Quran that give a wider context. So here we're talking about wudu, right? We're talking about wudu. And then it says, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when you get up to pray, i.e. you were asleep. So the question is, what kind of sleep breaks the wudu? So it says, عن مالك عن زيد بن أسلم العدوي أن, so there's inqita' here, right? There's inqita'. So doesn't give us. Zayd ibn Aslam does not narrate from Sayyidina Umar, as far as I know. And Imam Malik wouldn't have a chain like that. Like Imam Malik wouldn't have. So notice Malik narrates from Nafi' from Ibn Umar, right? Not from Umar. So that Malik has one person between him and Sayyidina Umar is odd, right? Because Sayyidina Umar passed away much earlier, right? So I believe it's like this: is Malik from Zayd ibn Aslam, and then there's a gap in the chain. But Zayd ibn Aslam is a Adawi. He's also from he's of the Mawali he's of the freed slaves or that family of Umar al-Khattab. He's also Adawi. So basically it's like somebody from that household, people who are related. Zayd ibn Aslam, we rely on him. He's quoting somebody that he should know about, right? Mawla Umar al-Khattab, anna Umar al-Khattab. قال إذا نام أحدكم مضطجعا فليتوضأ. Right, he said if you're sleeping on his side. So قال الشافعي والنوم الذي يوجب الوضوء على من وجب عليه وضوء بالنوم الغلبة على الأقل كائنا ذلك ما كان قليلا أو كثيرا. So it's interesting. Yeah, he's going to mention that in a second. So he says, Imam Shafi says, sleep that makes wudu obligatory upon those who have to make wudu is al-ghalabatu al-aql, that you lose consciousness. Whether that's a lot or little, the point is you lose consciousness, right? That's what we mean by noam, is loss of consciousness, right? And it's important for the Malikis, and the Malikis and Hanbalis. What do they mean by sleep? right? So for the Malikis, it's quite tricky because number one, their definition of sleep is different to ours, and number two, for them, if you doubt whether or not that happens, you make wudu. Whereas for us, unless you can say, Wallahi al-Azim, I fell asleep, you don't make wudu, right? You're not really sure. Like so many times I'm praying Fajr, I'm like, I really don't know if I'm awake or not. You know, like I'm in the masjid, I'm like, I don't know if I'm awake or not. Sometimes I'm like, you know what, I actually felt it. Like I've been in this scenario where I finished praying Fajr and then I realized I was actually asleep while I was praying. Like I know that, so I'll go and make wudu and pray, right? Things like that have happened to me. But other times was like really on the edge. So you say, do you know that you're asleep? No. Okay, then you still have wudu, right? But for the Malikis, doubt breaks wudu, right? So it's a bit tricky. So again, there's another quote here. It'll come much later. This quote does come later, and it's 34 or something like that. Here. Some of these things are just organized into totally different ways. 34. Here. This is this one here. It's totally different. So he says, أخبرنا مالك عن نافع أن عن ابن عمر أنه كان ينام قاعدا ثم يصلي ولا يتوضأ. Right. So notice the difference here. عمار كان ينام قاعدا كان ينام وهو قاعد. That's not a difference. That no one's going to say, oh, that's the hadith is ma'lul or difference in riwayah, like it's a non-difference, right? ثم يصلي ولا يتوضأ. So Imam Shafi says, إذا نام قاعدا مستويا لم يجب عليه عندي الوضوء لما ذكرت من الآثار. Right? وأن معلوما أن كانت الآية نزلت في نائمين أن النائم مضطجع, he's on his side. وأن معلوما أن من قيل له فلان نائم فلا يتوهم إلا مضطجعا. Right? When you say someone's asleep, in Arabic, you say someone's asleep, that doesn't mean people don't think that they're sitting. ولا يقع عليه اسم النوم مطلقا إلا أن يكون مضطجعا. So he's saying لغة, when you say sleep, إذا يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة أي كنتم نائمين. What does it mean نائمين? Lying on your side. Right? So he's saying لغة, somebody who is sleeping, sitting up is not considered نائم. Right? So even I know that in Ammiya they say nayimu, right? It means like lie the kid on his side, lie the kid down, right? To lie somebody down, to lie down is like nayim halak, like lie down. It doesn't mean go to sleep necessarily, right? And is that correct? Does Yaqub to say nayim, like who ana benayim al awlad? Does that right? Right. What's the root? What are the root letters? No. What are the root letters? If you heard me say nayim, noon, waw, mim, so I should say nowim, exactly. Ana unawwim al-awlad, right? So it's like the hadith, la tusayyiduni, don't say Sayyidina for my name. La tusayyiduni with a ya. So they say that's not possible. The Prophet said la tusayyiduni. Why? Because the root letters of Sayyid are seen waw dal, sada yasudu, فهو سيد, مات يموت فهو ميت, جاد يجود فهو جيد, right? جوده, he deemed it jayyid, not jayyadahu, right? So the root letters are no wim, right? So the point he's saying is that if you're not sleeping, if you're sitting up, you're not considered sleeping, right? So notice, ladies and gentlemen, how different this is to the normal dalil, right? The dalil that we usually hear is something quite different, right? Where's that hadith? So name is incorrect. There is no wim. So the point is the root letters are with a wow, so there's no reason to put a ya there. You can say huwa na'im, that's true. Huwa na'im, he's sleeping, or he's on his side, but you can't like qa'il, qa from qawala, right? But you can't say nayyim, right? Go ahead, Sheikh Ahmad.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaykum salam.
Regarding sitting up versus lying muttaji', I was actually wondering just this the other day because I was traveling a distance. If you're in a seat, suppose like a car, I don't think a plane, but like a car where the angle of the seat itself can be adjusted. So obviously, I guess normally when you're driving yourself, for example, you're sitting up at like almost a 90-degree angle, I guess, or close to such. Versus if you're
Sheikh Ahmad, people like Ahmad, they drive like 45 degrees, like
mashallah. Versus like, so you have that, which is like, I guess the norm or whatever, one extreme, versus sleep, which is like you're completely, what do you want to call it, 180. Where is the point at which one would say you're muttaji'? Like, is it,
so what I've heard was that basically you're sitting in a position where it would be awkward to pass wind. Like that position that you're in,
okay,
it's awkward.
like in a
But
physical sense, you mean?
otherwise, in principle, yeah, you could be like, let's say 10 degrees up, something like that, in
Okay.
principle. Wallahu a'lam. Okay, so what's the normal dalil then? Like if you open Fath al-Alam, Sheikh Ammar, right? What's the dalil there? Go ahead, Yaqub.
No, I was just going to go back to the fa'il discussion. So like then why if you say mayyit, if you say jayyid,
That's
why
on the
can't
path
you
of
say
fa'il. That's different. That's on the path of fa'il. So that's fa'il. That's on the path of, that's maywit, which becomes mayyit, and jaywid, which becomes jayyid. But the point is, the verb is nawwama yunawwimu, right?
no, we're not talking about the ism, we're talking about the fi'l, that's the difference.
The fi'l is yeah. So that's on the path. So fa'ala yufa'ilu. So it's nawwama yunawwimu. So wadahu, meaning he made him a sayyid, right? Nawwamahu, he put him to sleep. Nawwama also means to all go to sleep. Nawwama nasu means everybody went to sleep, like en masse. Nawwama. That has a different meaning. But the point is, it's not nayyim, right? There's many things in the Amiyah that don't make sense. Okay. Yeah. So I got to run, guys. What's the normal dalil that we hear? Right? Al-Aynani wika. You know the hadith? Right? Al-Aynani wika as-sa. Right? The eyes. Where is it? Where's the hadith? Al-Aynani. If you look at that hadith, it's not very sahih. Al-Aynani. So the hadith is here. It's narrated by Imam Ahmad Tabarani. It's not very, وفي كلا الإسنادين ضعف. So like that's your hadith. You know what I'm saying? Let me share it here. This is kind of like confusing. Like, how is that? Like, how is that your dalil, guys? You know what I'm saying? And so what's the problem? And this is a key, is that what's the problem? Um, is that basically we're not seeing where Imam Shafi is coming from. So what Imam Shafi is doing, like what we often see in these 6 books, particularly like Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, etc., is a hadith that is okay or slightly weak, but it's backing up. It's like the final what's it called, the what's it called, the straw that broke the donkey's back, right? It's the final thing. Like there's a fatwa going A and a fatwa going B. There's already a weight going either way on a discussion. So then you found a weak hadith or a possibly sahih hadith, that sort of supports it. That is not actually the dalil. That is just part of the dalil, right? And ignorance of the athar, be they, and this is even more so in the Hanafi school, right? Even more so in the Hanafis will quote random hadiths as their dalils. That's not their dalil at all. Right? So the Shafis will do the same thing. Like our proof is a hadith in Ibn Majah. Like it's only in Ibn Majah. Like I don't get it. How is it only in Ibn Majah? Like Imam Shafi doesn't even narrate it. How is that our dalil? Right? And so this is the importance of the Muwatta, is actually, oh yeah, this is the picture. So Umar said something like that. He said this, linguistically this. Okay, we already have an idea. Along comes a weak hadith or a possibly Hasan hadith. Oh yeah, sure. That's our quote unquote dalil. So we have to be cognizant of that. Very important. Okay, inshallah, we'll come back to this, inshallah. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم